Right now, Ole Miss, according to ESPN's FPI, was projected to go 8-4 this season. If that, in fact, is the exact number in which they go, is that an acceptable, satisfactory, maybe those are two different things, but is that a satisfactory result for Ole Miss in 2025?
Why don't you start on this one? Because that's a little more your wheelhouse.
So my answer is yes, but. So considering what they lost, first-round pick at quarterback, most draft picks in school history, all of that, if they come back with an 8-4 record, that is fine. I mean, after you lost Matt Corral and those guys in 2021, you went 8-4 and then bounced back with an 11-win season the next year. So that is a natural progression of, okay, they lost a ton. You've got a young quarterback, although this is his third year in the system. He has not started a game yet. There's a real chance that he experiences some growing pains in his first year as a starter. So it may not be perfect right away. 8-4, that should be fine and acceptable and all that. Like, you still feel really good about your program, in good shape, et cetera, et cetera. Here's where my butt comes in, though. I figured I'd get you with that.
Come on, man.
Is how did they get there? Because if it's another year of Pete Golding's defense kind of bailing them out again, if they win on defense only, if they still can't run the football and the running back room is kind of a mess with no clear front runner or how they're going to use it, if they're still really struggling in short yardage, if they're still really struggling in the red zone on the offensive line, which has been a problem, because remember, they made no material change. They did not change offensive coordinator. They did not change offensive line. They changed nothing. And Lane Kiffin talks publicly about how great continuity is. But as we talked about earlier this week, Pete Golding's defense has been the much better side of the ball, much more consistent side of the ball for Ole Miss for the last 2 years, really. They struggled in their big games to score. And so if that's still what they're doing, if they're playing good defense, they're keeping them in games, but they still can't run the football, they still can't get short yardage, they're still struggling in second halves, then you have to make some kind of material changes. Not at head coach. Lane Kiffin's not getting fired. But if it's 8-4 and all of the things that plagued that team last year still exist, then something has to be done to fix it. So that's my but is if it's 8-4 and it still looks like that, then Charlie Weiss Jr.'s job should be on some kind of seat, I think, this season. Mm-hmm. The offensive line coach, Sean Garrison, his job should be on some kind of seat this season if they underperform again. So 8-4 generally, yes. Acceptable, satisfactory, all that.
Depends on what the 8-4 looks like is what you're telling me.
And if it looks good and they're moving the football and they're just short in a couple areas, then fine, don't make any changes at all. But if it's all that, then yes, you need to make some public material change.
Okay. I agree with a lot of what you said. You know, I understand that Ole Miss is having an era of unprecedented success, right? This is the best Ole Miss has been since the late 50s, early 60s. I get all that. But at the same time, you know, Ole Miss isn't far enough removed from having bad seasons that to be able to sneeze at 8-4 and just go, you know. So, in a year where you're replacing one of your all-time great quarterbacks, a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, it's acceptable to be 8-4 this year. Now, next year, I would tell you that with Simmons, if Simmons comes back and you continue to build, next year you should have another good year. It should be another pushing for the playoff kind of year if Simmons is back next season. If he's not, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But and the other side of this coin is Simmons good? We think Simmons is good. We have a lot of evidence that tells us he's going to be good. But until you put him out there and let him play games, you see how he reacts at Kentucky, which, say what you want, that's a tough place to play. We don't know that he's good.
Right.
So if Ole Miss goes 8-4 this year, they lose to Georgia, they lose to LSU, let's say Florida at home, South Carolina.
They go to Oklahoma as well.
They go to Oklahoma. They drop, they go 4-4 in the conference, basically. Now somebody says they can't lose to inferior teams, and I would agree with that. If you're losing, like you losing to Kentucky last year was unacceptable. That's not acceptable. So you look at LSU's or Ole Miss's schedule, right? If they lose to Arkansas, if they lose to Kentucky again, They dropped the Egg Bowl.
Man, Arkansas on that field in week 3 will be a very similar opponent and all that than that Kentucky was a year ago.
There's some similarities in that game. You lose the Egg Bowl. Something like that. Those are games that will have people looking at Kiffin going, okay, what's really going on here?
If you are 8-3 going into the Egg Bowl and you lose the Egg Bowl, then it's...
That's what I mean. That was the last straw for Nutt, right? So Nutt comes into Starkville at 8-3 in 2009 after beating LSU, and Mullen gets him, and then it was all downhill from there. And I'm not saying that next year almost would go 4-8 and then 2-10 and then he's gone, but I am saying that your fans would be like, wait a minute, because right now there is a difference between the programs, right? Ole Miss should not lose to Mississippi State this year. No matter how much Mississippi State fans want that. Some of them talking right now. It's just they would be favored for a reason. Mm-hmm. The talent level is there. The talent disparity is there, I should say. So, yeah, I agree with that statement that it depends. If they lose to Georgia, LSU, tough game to Florida, tough game to South Carolina, and especially if South Carolina is a playoff team and Florida is good again, okay, that's fine in this year. But again, yeah, you're right. If there's like weirdness with the offense again, and I don't know what that would be this year because Bentley's gone, but if there's just something weird happening,
that's been the side of the ball that's been the weird one. The running back situation last year, the year before, it was you had receiver drama and tight end drama. I mean, you remember you kicked Michael Trigg off the team a few weeks into the season. Spencer Sanders, you brought him in for some reason, and all that stuff. That side of the ball has always been weird. Ever since Matt Corral left, it's just been weird is the best way to describe it. But, yeah, exactly. We got this text on the text line said that's not acceptable with the expectations of Lane. And one thing I really like about Lane Kiffin is this isn't good enough. Right. And he tried to push his team, public, to get into the playoffs last year, the whole spot the ball stuff and all that. Sure, fine. But I'll go back to all the way his first season when they got cheered off the field after they lost to Alabama. And he gets in the press conference and says, what are you cheering about? Yeah. I like that part of it, but also internally you've got to understand that if that's what you are, then that is okay. Publicly you don't say that. Internally, yes, that's okay.
There's a difference between expectations and what's acceptable, right? You can have championship expectations, but if you're Ole Miss and you're going to say 8-4 is unacceptable, you're going to make it really hard to keep coaches at that point. Because if Kiffin can't have an 8-4 season without being on the hot seat, who's taking your job?
Yeah.
And so you got to have a little grace there. If Ole Miss goes 8-4, goes to a bowl, they're 9-4. That's 48 wins in 5 years.